The marble hallway of the penthouse was cold beneath Grace Okoro's bare feet. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain he could hear it. She pressed her back against the wall, her breath coming in short, silent gasps as she listened to the man on the other side, the man she'd served breakfast to that very morning. Michael Sinclair's voice was low, calculated, venomous. "Tomorrow night. No mistakes this time. The drug goes in her evening tea. She'll be unconscious within 20 minutes. You stage it in the bathtub. Make it look like she fell asleep and drowned. Tragic accident. The grieving husband inherits everything." Grace's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. A woman's voice responded, smooth, professional. "Maya, and the board? They'll fall in line. Half of them already resent her success. A man at the helm will make them comfortable. We split the company 60-40. You get your seat as COO. I get control." Grace's legs trembled. She needed to move, to run, to warn someone, but her body wouldn't obey. Then Michael laughed. It was a sound that made her skin crawl. "Finally, that self-righteous, perfect Ava Sinclair will be gone. And no one will ever know." Grace took one step backward. The floorboard creaked. The conversation stopped. Silence. Then footsteps. Fast. Purposeful. Grace spun around, but she wasn't fast enough. Michael's hand clamped around her wrist like a vice, yanking her back. She stumbled, her shoulder slamming into the doorframe. His face was inches from hers. Cold, furious, terrifying. "How long have you been standing there?" I wasn't. I was just—" His grip tightened. Pain shot up her arm. "Listen to me very carefully, Grace." His voice was a whisper, but it cut like a blade. "You're illegal. You have no papers, no rights. One phone call and ICE will be at this door within the hour. Do you understand me?" Tears burned in Grace's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You say one word to anyone, and you'll be in a detention center by morning. Then deported. Back to Nigeria, back to nothing." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. "Or worse, accidents happen to people like you every day in this city. No one even notices." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, do we have an understanding?" She nodded, her whole body shaking. Michael released her wrist and stepped back, smoothing his shirt as if nothing had happened. His expression shifted. Calm, composed. The perfect husband once again. "Good girl. Now go clean the kitchen. Mrs. Sinclair will be home soon." Grace stumbled away, clutching her wrist, her mind spinning. She had just overheard a murder plot, and the man who planned it had her life in his hands. But before we dive into how Grace Okoro found herself trapped in a billionaire's penthouse, overhearing a murder plot that could destroy her life, we need to go back. Back to where it all began. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you're returning, thank you. You're the reason we keep bringing you these stories. But here's the thing. YouTube only shows these videos to more people when you engage. So if you enjoy our stories, hooked, please like the video right now. Drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen, and subscribe if you haven't already. It takes 2 seconds, but it helps this channel grow tremendously. Now, let's rewind. Let's go back 3 months earlier, to the day Grace Okoro arrived in New York City with nothing but a battered suitcase and a heart full of hope. Grace Okoro had imagined America 1,000 times. In her dreams, it was bright and golden, full of opportunity and second chances. In the stories her mother used to tell her before she died, America was the place where hard work always paid off, where even the poorest child could become something great. But standing in the arrivals terminal at JFK Airport, surrounded by strangers rushing past her in every direction, Grace felt something else entirely. Fear. She clutched the handle of her worn suitcase, a gift from her late father, and scanned the crowd for a familiar face. Her aunt, Nkem, had promised to meet her here. But the terminal was chaos, a swirling mass of people shouting in languages she didn't fully understand, dragging luggage, embracing loved ones. Grace's palms were sweating. She'd been on a plane for 16 hours. Her visa, a tourist visa that had cost her aunt every bit of savings she had, was already a lie. Grace wasn't here to tour. She was here to survive. Her parents were gone. Her father, a school teacher, had died of malaria when she was 14. Her mother, a seamstress, had followed 2 years later from an illness the local clinic couldn't treat. Grace had been passed between relatives like an unwanted burden until her aunt Nkem, who had emigrated to the US years ago, finally offered her a way out. "Come to America, Grace. I'll find you work. You'll have a chance." And so here she was, 17 years old, alone, undocumented, terrified. Grace! She turned and saw her, Aunt Nkem, waving frantically from across the terminal. Relief flooded through her. Grace pushed through the crowd, dragging her suitcase behind her, and fell into her aunt's arms. "N.M., you made it." Nkem pulled back, gripping Grace's shoulders and studying her face. "Look at you. So grown. Your mother would be so proud." Grace's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting herself to spit. Nkem's expression softened. "Come. Let's get you home." The apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, but it was clean and warm. Nkem had prepared jollof rice and fried plantains, and for the first time in months, Grace felt something close to comfort. As they ate, Nkem explained the situation. "You can't work just anywhere, Grace. No papers means no official jobs, but I have something for you, a woman I clean for. Her niece needs help." "Help with what?" "Housekeeping. Cooking. Just being there. The woman is very wealthy, very kind. Her name is Ava Sinclair. She's a CEO, young, successful, but—" Nkem hesitated. "Lonely, I think. Her aunt worries about her." Grace frowned. "Why would a billionaire need me?" Nkem smiled. "Because money doesn't buy everything, Anne. Sometimes even the richest people need someone who cares." Grace considered this. She had no choice, really. She needed work. She needed to stay hidden. And if this Ava Sinclair was as kind as her aunt said, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. "When do I start?" "Monday. I'll take you there myself." Grace had never seen anything like it. The Sinclair penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was white, glass, and gold, so clean and perfect that Grace was afraid to touch anything. Nkem squeezed her hand. "Breathe, Grace. You belong here just as much as anyone." A woman appeared at the top of the staircase, elegant, poised, radiating confidence. She wore a crisp white blouse and tailored black pants. Her skin was a rich, deep brown, and her hair was pulled back into a sleek bun. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Ava Sinclair. She descended the stairs with a warm smile. "You must be Grace. My aunt has told me so much about you." Grace's voice caught in her throat. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity." Ava's smile widened. "Please, call me Ava. We don't do ma'am here. You're not a servant, Grace. You're here to help me manage this crazy life of mine, and I'm grateful for it." Grace blinked, surprised. She'd expected coldness, distance, but Ava's warmth was genuine. "Let me show you around." The tour of the penthouse was overwhelming. There were 6 bedrooms, a home gym, a private office, a chef's kitchen, and even a library. Grace's head spun trying to remember where everything was. Then they entered the living room, and Grace saw him. Michael Sinclair sat on the leather couch, scrolling through his phone. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. Handsome in a cold, detached way. He barely looked up when they entered. "Michael, this is Grace. She'll be helping around the house." Michael's eyes flicked toward Grace for half a second. His expression didn't change. "Sure, whatever." He returned to his phone. Ava's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Grace, why don't you start by familiarizing yourself with the kitchen? I'll be in my office if you need anything." Grace nodded and hurried away, but not before she caught the look on Ava's face. A flicker of hurt, quickly hidden. That first week, Grace learned quickly. Ava was brilliant, driven, and kind. She ran her tech company, Sinclair Dynamics, with precision and vision. She treated Grace with respect, even insisting they eat meals together when her schedule allowed. But Michael was different. He barely acknowledged Grace's existence. When he did speak to her, it was in clipped, dismissive tones, commands, not requests. "Bring me coffee. Clean this up. Stay out of my office." Grace obeyed, but she watched, and she noticed things. The way Michael looked at Ava when she spoke about work, not with pride, but with something darker. Resentment. The way he'd leave the room when Ava's phone rang with business calls. The way his jaw tightened whenever someone praised Ava's success. Grace said nothing. It wasn't her place. But deep down she felt it, a creeping unease, a sense that something in this perfect penthouse was very, very wrong. It was a Thursday morning, and Grace was preparing breakfast in the kitchen when she heard Ava's scream. Not a scream of terror, a scream of pure joy. Grace dropped the spatula and rushed into the living room, her heart pounding. Ava stood in the center of the room, her phone clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Grace! Grace! Oh my God! Ma'am! Ava, what happened? Are you okay?" Ava laughed through her tears, holding up her phone. Forbes just called. I made their top 30 visionaries under 30 list." Mug frozen halfway to his lips. His eyes moved from Ava's tearful face to the Forbes just called. I made their top 30 visionaries under 30 list. I'm on the cover, Grace. The cover. Grace's face broke into a wide smile. "Ava, that's incredible. Congratulations." Ava pulled Grace into a tight hug, spinning her around. For a moment, they were just 2 young women celebrating a victory, not employer and employee, but friends. Then Michael walked into the room. He stopped in the doorway, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. His eyes moved from Ava's tearful face to the phone in her hand, to Grace standing beside her. "What's going on?" Ava turned to him, her face glowing. "Michael! Baby, I just got the call. I'm on the Forbes 30 under 30 cover. Can you believe it?" Michael's expression didn't change. He took a slow sip of his coffee. "Oh, that's great." Ava's smile faltered. "Great. Michael, this is huge. This is everything I've been working toward." "I said it's great, Ava. Congratulations." He set his mug down on the counter with a sharp clink. "I have to get to the office." "Wait, don't you want to—" But he was already gone, the door closing behind him with a cold finality. The silence that followed was suffocating. Grace watched as Ava's joy drained away, replaced by something else. Confusion, hurt, embarrassment. She stared at the closed door, her phone still clutched in her hand. "He's just stressed," Ava whispered, more to herself than to Grace. "Work has been hard for him lately." Grace said nothing, but she saw the truth in Ava's eyes. Michael wasn't stressed. He was angry. That night Ava came home early, a rarity. She'd ordered Michael's favorite meal from an upscale steakhouse and set the dining table herself, complete with candles and wine. Grace watched from the kitchen as Ava fussed over every detail, adjusting the napkins, repositioning the flowers. "Do you think it looks okay, Grace?" "It looks beautiful, Ava." Ava smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I want tonight to be special. I feel like we haven't really connected in weeks." Grace nodded, but unease twisted in her stomach. When Michael arrived home, he barely glanced at the table. "What's all this?" Ava stepped forward, her smile bright but fragile. "I thought we could celebrate together. Just the two of us. I know this morning was rushed, but—" "I already ate." Ava froze. "What?" "I grabbed something at the office. I wasn't hungry." He loosened his tie and headed toward the bedroom. "I've got calls to make." "Michael, wait." But he was already gone. Ava stood there, staring at the perfectly set table, the untouched food, the flickering candles. Her hands trembled as she reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. Grace emerged from the kitchen, her heart breaking for the woman who had shown her nothing but kindness. "Ava, it's fine." Ava's voice was tight, controlled. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. "He's busy. I shouldn't have assumed." She forced a smile. "Why don't you take the food, Grace? Share it with your aunt. No sense in letting it go to waste." Grace wanted to say something, anything, but what could she say? This wasn't her place. This wasn't her marriage. So she nodded and quietly began packing up the food, all while Ava stood frozen in the dim light of the candles, alone. Over the next few weeks, Grace began to see the pattern. Every time Ava achieved something, a successful product launch, a major investor meeting, media coverage, Michael grew more distant, more cold. He'd stay out late without explanation. He'd take calls in private, speaking in hushed, irritated tones. He'd snap at Ava over the smallest things, a misplaced document, dinner being 5 minutes late, her laughing too loudly on a work call. And Ava, brilliant and successful in every other area of her life, seemed to shrink a little more each day under his disdain. Grace saw it all. She saw the way Ava would apologize for things that weren't her fault, the way she'd try to make herself smaller, quieter, less threatening, the way she'd check her phone obsessively, hoping for a text from Michael that never came. One night, Grace found Ava sitting alone in the library, staring at her laptop screen. Her eyes were red. "Ava, are you okay?" Ava quickly closed the laptop and wiped her eyes. "I'm fine, Grace. Just tired." But Grace had seen the screen. It was a fertility clinic website. It was late October when Ava made the announcement. The entire board of Sinclair Dynamics gathered in the penthouse for a dinner meeting. Grace moved quietly through the room, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates, invisible as always. Ava stood at the head of the table, confident and commanding. "I want to thank you all for your continued support as we expand into new markets. But tonight, I have an important announcement to make." She turned to Michael, who sat at her right, his expression carefully neutral. "Effective immediately, I'm appointing Michael Sinclair as Vice President of Strategic Development." The room erupted in polite applause. Michael stood, shaking hands with board members, accepting their congratulations with a practiced smile. But Grace saw something else. She saw the way his eyes gleamed, not with gratitude but with calculation. She saw the way his hand lingered on Ava's shoulder just a moment too long, possessive rather than affectionate. And she saw the woman sitting across the table, Maya Chen, a sleek, polished board member with sharp eyes and a sharper smile. Maya raised her glass to Michael, and he returned the gesture with a subtle nod. It was a small moment, insignificant to everyone else, but Grace felt a chill run down her spine. 2 days later, Grace was dusting the hallway outside Michael's office when she heard voices. She shouldn't have stopped. She should have kept moving. But something in Michael's tone made her freeze. "This is our opening, Maya. She just handed me access to everything." Grace's breath caught. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering. A woman's voice responded, smooth, confident. "Maya, you're sure you can handle this? She trusts you. That's exactly why it'll work. She's so desperate to fix this marriage, she'll never see it coming." Michael laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." And the board. Half of them already resent her. A woman that young, that successful, it makes them uncomfortable. When the time comes, they'll side with us. Grace's hands trembled. She didn't understand what they were planning, but every instinct screamed that it was wrong. She needed to move. Now. She took a step backward, as quietly as possible. The floorboard creaked. The conversation stopped. Grace's blood turned to ice. Footsteps. Coming toward the door. She spun around and hurried down the hallway, her heart threatening to explode from her chest. She ducked into the kitchen just as Michael's office door opened. She pressed her back against the counter, forcing herself to breathe normally, to look busy. Michael appeared in the doorway, his eyes scanning the room. They landed on Grace. "How long have you been here?" I just came to start dinner prep, sir." His gaze narrowed, assessing her. The seconds stretched into eternity. Finally, he spoke. "Next time, knock before you come upstairs when I'm working." "Yes, sir." "I'm sorry." He stared at her for another long moment, then turned and left. Grace's legs nearly gave out beneath her. She gripped the edge of the counter, her entire body shaking. She'd heard something she wasn't supposed to hear, and she had a terrible feeling that Michael knew it. That night, Grace lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling. She should tell Ava. She should warn her that her husband and a board member were plotting something. But plotting what? She didn't have enough information. And what if she was wrong? What if she'd misunderstood? More than that, what if she spoke up and Michael made good on an unspoken threat? She was undocumented. Illegal. One phone call, and her life in America would be over. Grace rolled onto her side, pulling her thin blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Grace, my love, always do what is right, even when it is hard." But what was right? And how could she do it without destroying herself in the process? Grace was folding laundry in Ava's bedroom when she noticed the appointment card on the nightstand. Dr. Rebecca Chen, Reproductive Endocrinology. Affelup, November 18th, 2 p.m. Grace's hands stilled. She shouldn't be looking. This was private. But something about the way the card was positioned, face up, as if Ava had been staring at it, made Grace's chest tighten with concern. She heard footsteps and quickly returned to folding the laundry. Ava entered, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice professional and controlled. "Yes, I'll have the revised proposal to you by Friday." "Thank you." She ended the call and noticed Grace. Her expression softened. "Grace, you don't have to do that. I can handle my own laundry." "I don't mind, Ava. Really." Ava smiled, but it was tired. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of the world had finally caught up with her. Grace hesitated, then spoke gently. "Ava, are you okay?" Ava looked up, surprised. For a moment, Grace thought she'd overstepped, but then Ava's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to be." Grace set down the laundry and sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "You don't have to tell me, but if you want to talk, I'm here." Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Michael and I have been trying to have a baby for 2 years." Grace's heart sank. "Every month, I hope, and every month, nothing." Ava's hands twisted in her lap. "I've been to 4 different doctors. They've run every test imaginable. And they all say the same thing. There's nothing wrong with me. Physically, I should be able to conceive. Then, why, I don't know." Ava's voice cracked. "Maybe it's stress. Maybe my body knows something I don't. Maybe I'm just broken." "You're not broken, Ava." Ava smiled sadly. "Michael thinks we should stop trying. He says it's putting too much pressure on both of us. But I can't help feeling like this is the one thing I can't accomplish. I can build $1 billion company, but I can't give my husband a child." Grace's throat tightened. "Has Michael been tested?" Ava's expression shifted, uncomfortable, defensive. "He doesn't think it's necessary. He says it's embarrassing, and that the doctors already confirmed I'm healthy, so—" She trailed off, but Grace heard what wasn't said. Michael refused to be tested, which meant Ava carried the weight of their infertility alone. Grace reached out and gently squeezed Ava's hand. "You are not broken. You are one of the strongest women I've ever met." Ava's tears spilled over. She pulled Grace into a hug, holding on as if she were drowning. And Grace held her back, silently vowing to protect this woman. No matter what it cost that night, Grace was cleaning the kitchen when she heard raised voices from the master bedroom. She froze, her hands still in the soapy water. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this." Ava's voice, strained and frustrated. "I'm not being difficult. I'm being realistic." Michael's tone was cold, detached. "We've been trying for 2 years, Ava. Maybe it's time to accept that it's not going to happen. But we haven't explored every option. What if—" "What if what? What if I go get my sperm count tested so you can have another thing to obsess over?" His voice rose. "This is exactly the problem, Ava. Everything has to be perfect for you. Your company, your image, your life. But you can't control everything. That's not fair, isn't it? You built an empire, but you can't build a family. Maybe that should tell you something." The silence that followed was deafening. Grace's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to march in there to tell Michael exactly what she thought of him. But she couldn't. She was invisible, powerless. When Ava finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Why are you being so cruel?" "I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. Maybe if you spent less time at the office and more time being a wife, things would be different." Grace heard a door slam, then footsteps, Michael storming out of the bedroom. She quickly dried her hands and stepped back, but not before Michael appeared in the hallway. He stopped when he saw her, his jaw tight. "You got something to say?" Grace lowered her eyes. "No, sir. Good. Because the last thing my wife needs is her maid getting involved in our marriage." He grabbed his jacket from the hook. "I'm going out." "Don't wait up." The front door slammed behind him. Grace stood there, her entire body trembling with anger. Then she heard it, a soft, broken sound coming from the bedroom. Crying. Grace found Ava curled up on the bed, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Ava?" Ava looked up, her face blotchy and wet with tears. "Grace, I'm sorry." You shouldn't have to see this. Stop apologizing. Grace sat on the edge of the bed. You have nothing to be sorry for. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I try so hard to make him happy, but nothing I do is ever enough. Grace's heart broke. Ava, listen to me. You are enough. You've always been enough. If he can't see that, that's his failure, not yours. Ava wiped her eyes, trying to pull herself together. He's just stressed. The new role at the company, the pressure. That's not an excuse to treat you this way. Ava looked at Grace, surprised by the sharpness in her tone. Grace softened. I'm sorry, I hate seeing you hurt. Ava reached out and squeezed Grace's hand. Thank you for being here, for caring. They sat together in the quiet, the only sound Ava's ragged breathing as she tried to compose herself. Finally, Ava spoke again. Do you believe in fate, Grace? I'm not sure. Why? Because sometimes I wonder if meeting you was fate, like God knew I needed someone who actually gave a damn. Grace's eyes stung with tears. I do give a damn, Ava. More than you know. Ava smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. You're a good person, Grace Okoro. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. It was past midnight when Michael finally came home. Grace was still awake, unable to sleep. She heard the front door open, heard his unsteady footsteps in the hallway. He'd been drinking. She heard him pause outside Ava's bedroom door. For a moment, Grace thought he might go in, might apologize. But then he moved on, heading to the guest room instead. Grace lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Michael was cruel, manipulative. He was tearing Ava apart piece by piece. But was he capable of something worse? The conversation she'd overheard between him and Maya echoed in her mind. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Grace's stomach churned. She needed to know what they were planning. She needed proof. 2 weeks later, Sinclair Dynamics held its annual holiday party at a lavish venue in Manhattan. Grace wasn't supposed to attend, but Ava insisted. You're part of this family now, Grace. I want you there. So Grace found herself in a borrowed dress, standing awkwardly among tech moguls, investors, and board members, clutching a glass of sparkling cider, confident, gracious, every inch the CEO. But Grace also saw the moments when Ava's smile faltered, when her eyes searched the crowd for Michael. He was across the room, deep in conversation with Maya Chen. They stood too close. They laughed too comfortably, and when Maya's hand brushed Michael's arm, lingering just a moment too long, Grace felt her blood run cold. She moved closer, weaving through the crowd, trying to look casual. The timeline is set, Maya was saying, her voice low. January is perfect. She'll be distracted with the new product launch. And the documents? Already prepared. You just need to sign when the time comes. Michael's eyes flicked around the room, checking to see if anyone was listening. Grace ducked behind a group of executives, her heart pounding. What about her? Michael asked. They both laughed. Grace's hands shook. She pulled out her phone, pretending to check messages, but her mind was racing. They were planning something for January, something involving documents, something that would hurt Ava. But what? She needed more information. She needed Grace. She jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Ava appeared beside her, smiling. There you are. Are you having fun? Grace forced a smile. Yes, it's beautiful. Ava followed Grace's gaze across the room to where Michael and Maya stood. Her smile dimmed slightly. They've been working closely on the new strategic initiatives, Ava said, her tone carefully neutral. It's good. Michael needed something to feel passionate about. Grace wanted to scream. She wanted to grab Ava by the shoulders and tell her everything. But she had no proof, just fragments of conversations, suspicions, and Michael's threat still hung over her head like a blade, so instead she smiled and nodded. "I'm glad he's finding his place." Ava squeezed her arm. "Thank you for being here tonight. It means more than you know." As Ava walked away, Grace's resolve hardened. She couldn't stay silent much longer. Ava was in danger. It was 3 days before Christmas when Grace found it. She was cleaning Michael's office, something she avoided whenever possible, when she noticed his laptop was open. He'd gone out to meet a client. He'd be gone for at least an hour. Grace knew she shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. Grace moved closer to the desk. The screen showed an email thread between Michael and Maya. Her eyes scanned the text. "Grace object, final phase. Everything is in place. January 15th. January 15th, and you're certain you can go through with it. Michael? Brugg Izzy trusts me completely. The board will vote you in as interim CEO. We split control 60/40ths as agreed. Maya. And the girl, the maid? Eichel? She's undocumented. One threat, keep her mouth shut. If she doesn't, she disappears. Simple. Grace's vision blurred. Her hands gripped the edge of the desk. They were going to kill Ava. Before she could think, she heard the front door open. Footsteps. Michael was back early. Grace's heart stopped. She quickly stepped away from the desk, grabbing the trash bin and pretending to empty it. Michael appeared in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to the laptop, then to Grace. The air between them turned to ice. "What are you doing in here?" I was just cleaning, sir." He moved toward her, fast. Grace stumbled backward. "How long have you been in here?" "I just walked in. I swear." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist, the same wrist he'd grabbed weeks ago. His fingers dug into her skin. "You listen to me very carefully, Grace." His voice was low, deadly. "I don't know what you think you saw or heard. But if you say one word, one single word to Ava, I will make sure you're on a plane back to Nigeria within 24 hours. Do you understand me?" Grace's voice shook. "I wasn't. Do you understand me?" Tears burned her eyes. She nodded. He released her, shoving her backward. She stumbled, catching herself on the doorframe. "Get out, and stay out of my office." Grace's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her palms as if they belonged to someone else. The bruise on her wrist from Michael's grip was already darkening, a purple-blue reminder of what he was capable of. January 15th. That was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks until Ava would be murdered in her own home. Grace pressed her hands against her face, trying to think. Her mind raced in circles, each thought colliding with the next. If she told Ava, Michael would know. He'd call ICE. She'd be detained, deported, sent back to Nigeria where she had nothing and no one. Or worse, he'd make her disappear. Simple, he'd said, as if her life meant nothing. But if she stayed silent, Ava would die. The woman who treated her like family, who held her when she cried about missing her parents, who insisted Grace eat at the table with her instead of in the kitchen like a servant. Grace's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, soft and steady. "NM, courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right even when your hands are trembling." Grace's hands were trembling now. But what was right? And how could she do it without destroying herself in the process? It was December 28th when Ava knocked on Grace's door. Grace quickly wiped her eyes and opened it, forcing a smile. Ava, hi. Do you need something? Ava stood in the hallway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She looked softer than usual. No makeup, her hair loose around her shoulders, wearing an oversized sweater. She looked young, vulnerable. I need company, Ava said with a small smile. Michael's out again, and this place feels too big when I'm alone. Can I come in? Grace stepped aside. Of course. They sat on Grace's small bed, sipping hot chocolate in comfortable silence. It was strange, Grace thought, how 2 women from such different worlds could sit together like this. No titles, no formalities. Just 2 people trying not to feel so alone. Grace, can I ask you something? Ava's voice was quiet. Anything. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you're playing a role, and any moment someone's going to realize you don't belong? Grace's throat tightened. All the time. Ava smiled sadly. Everyone thinks I have it all figured out, but most days I feel like I'm barely holding on. She stared into her mug. My marriage is falling apart. I can't have children. My board barely respects me. And sometimes I wonder if I built this entire company just to prove I was worth something, and it still wasn't enough. Grace set down her mug and turned to face Ava fully. Ava, listen to me. You are worth everything. You're brilliant, kind, and strong. You've built something incredible, and anyone who can't see that. She stopped herself before she said too much. Ava looked at her with such raw gratitude that Grace felt her resolve solidify. This woman deserved to live. She deserved to be happy. She deserved the truth. But how could Grace give it to her without both of them ending up destroyed? The next morning, Grace made a decision. She couldn't go to Ava directly, not yet. She needed proof, real evidence. Something that would make Ava believe her and protect them both. While Michael was out, and Ava was at the office, Grace returned to Michael's office. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain someone would hear it from outside the building. She opened his laptop. He'd left it unlocked, arrogant in his certainty that Grace was too afraid to act. She found the email thread again and took photos with her phone, her hands shaking so badly she had to retake several shots. Then she found something else. Financial documents showing wire transfers to Maya, coded notes about Phase 1 and Phase 2, and a folder labeled Contingency. Inside were documents that made Grace's blood run cold. Life insurance policies on Ava, worth $50 million, with Michael as the sole beneficiary. Corporate bylaws showing that if Ava died, her shares would transfer to her spouse. Board meeting notes where Maya had been positioning herself for months to take over as CEO. This wasn't just about jealousy or greed. This was a calculated assassination. Grace photographed everything, her fingers flying across her phone screen. She had just finished when she heard the front door open. Her heart stopped. Michael wasn't supposed to be back for another hour. Grace quickly closed the laptop and shoved her phone into her pocket. She grabbed the cleaning supplies and hurried toward the door, but she was too late. Michael stood in the hallway blocking her path. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing in my office? Again?" Grace's voice came out strangled. "I was cleaning. I told you to stay out." He moved toward her, and Grace backed up until she hit the desk. He was close now, too close. His hand shot out and grabbed her phone from her pocket before she could react. "Give that back! Shut up!" He unlocked her phone. She'd never set a password, never thought she'd need one, and scrolled through her photos. His face went white, then red, then something far more dangerous. He looked up at her, and Grace saw murder in his eyes. "You stupid little girl." Grace tried to run, but he grabbed her arm, yanking her back with brutal force. She cried out as pain shot through her shoulder. He shoved her against the wall, his forearm pressed against her throat. Grace couldn't breathe. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. "I warned you. I gave you a chance, but you just couldn't help yourself, could you?" His face was inches from hers. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete every single one of those photos. Then you're going to pack your things and get the hell out of this apartment. Tonight—" Grace gasped for air. Ava will never know you existed. You'll disappear, just like thousands of other illegal immigrants disappear every year in this city. No one will look for you. No one will care." He released her, and Grace collapsed to the floor, coughing and gasping. Michael crouched down beside her, his voice sickeningly calm now. Or, option 2, you stay quiet, delete the photos, and nothing happens. You get to keep your little life here. You get to stay safe. Ava never has to know what a sneaky, ungrateful little thief you are. Grace's mind raced. She didn't have the photos anymore. He had her phone. She had no evidence, no proof, but she had her memory. She knew the truth. And she had 3 weeks to figure out how to save Ava's life without getting herself killed in the process. She looked up at Michael, her eyes burning with tears and fury, and made her choice. "I'll stay quiet." Michael smiled, a cold, triumphant smile. "Good girl." He stood and handed her phone back, the photos already deleted. "Now get out of my office." Grace stumbled out of the room, her entire body shaking. But as she closed the door behind her, she whispered something under her breath, something Michael didn't hear. "I'm sorry, Mama, but I'm not staying quiet." That night Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her mind spinning. She'd lost the evidence, but she hadn't lost the truth. She knew what Michael and Maya were planning. She knew the date. She knew the method. She just needed to figure out how to stop them. The next morning, Grace tried again. Ava was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her tablet and sipping coffee. She looked tired, exhausted really, but she smiled when Grace entered. "Good morning, Grace. Did you sleep well?" Grace's heart pounded. This was her chance. "Ava, can I talk to you about something?" Ava set down her tablet. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Grace opened her mouth, but the words stuck in her throat. She saw Michael's face in her mind, his hand around her throat, his cold eyes promising violence. I wanted to say thank you. For everything you've done for me." Ava's expression softened. "Oh, Grace, you don't have to thank me. You've been a blessing in my life." But as she turned to leave, Ava spoke again. "Grace, are you okay? You seem scared." Grace froze. She turned back slowly. Ava was watching her with genuine concern. "If something's wrong, you can tell me. I want to help." Grace's eyes stung with tears. She wanted to tell her everything, to collapse into Ava's arms and beg her to protect them both. But Michael's threat echoed in her mind. And she knew if she spoke now without proof, without a plan, they'd both end up dead. So instead she smiled. "I'm okay. Just homesick, I think." Ava stood and pulled Grace into a hug. "I'm here if you need me. Always." Grace hugged her back, memorizing the warmth of it, because she had a terrible feeling that time was running out. It was January 2nd when Grace saw them together again. She was returning from the grocery store when she spotted Michael and Maya sitting in a cafe across the street from the penthouse. They were deep in conversation, leaning close, their expression serious. Grace ducked behind a parked car and watched. Maya slid an envelope across the table. Michael opened it, scanned the contents, and nodded. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial. Clear liquid, no bigger than Grace's thumb. Her stomach dropped. The drug. Maya took it, slipping it into her purse with practiced ease. They spoke for a few more minutes, then parted ways. Michael heading back toward the penthouse, Maya disappearing into the crowd. Grace's legs felt like lead, but she forced herself to move. She couldn't let Michael see her watching. She hurried back to the apartment, her mind racing. January 15th was 13 days away, and Grace had just watched them exchange the weapon that would kill Ava. That night, Grace made a decision. She couldn't save Ava alone. She needed help, but who could she trust? The police? They'd demand proof she didn't have, and they'd discover her immigration status. Ava's aunt? She was elderly and lived in another state. Ava herself? She still didn't believe Michael was capable of hurting her. Grace stared at her phone, feeling utterly alone. Then she remembered something. Ava had a security team, discreet, professional men who monitored the building and occasionally accompanied Ava to high-profile events. One of them, Marcus, had always been kind to Grace. He'd smiled at her, held doors open, treated her like a person instead of furniture. Could she trust him? It was a risk, but it was the only option she had left. Tomorrow, Grace decided, tomorrow she'd find Marcus and tell him everything, and pray that he believed her. Grace waited until Ava left for work before she made her move. She knew Marcus would be in the building's security office on the ground floor. He always started his shift at 8 in the morning. Her hands trembled as she rode the elevator down, rehearsing what she'd say in her mind. No, that sounded crazy. There's something happening that you need to know about. That was too vague. Please, I need your help. Someone is trying to kill Ava. That was the truth, raw and desperate. Maybe that was all she had left. The elevator doors opened, and Grace stepped into the marble lobby. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she approached the security desk. Marcus looked up from his monitor and smiled. "Good morning, Grace. Everything okay?" Grace opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She stood there, frozen, the words trapped in her throat. Marcus's smile faded. "Grace? What's wrong?" She glanced around the lobby. 2 residents were checking their mail. The doorman was helping someone with their bags. Too many eyes, too many ears. Can we talk somewhere private?" Marcus's expression shifted to concern. He stood immediately. "Of course. Follow me." He led her into a small office adjacent to the security desk and closed the door. The room was cramped. Just a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of monitors showing different angles of the building. "Sit down," Marcus said gently. "Take your time." Grace sank into the chair, her entire body shaking. Marcus pulled up the other chair and sat across from her, his posture open and patient. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. I'm here to help." Grace looked up at him. Marcus was in his early 40s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that made her feel slightly less terrified. He'd always treated her with respect, even when others in the building looked right through her. She took a breath and made her choice. Mrs. Sinclair is in danger. Her husband and one of her board members, Maya Chen, they're planning to kill her. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss her. But his expression grew very serious. "That's a heavy accusation, Grace. What makes you think this?" Grace's words tumbled out in a rush. She told him about the conversations she'd overheard, the email thread she'd seen on Michael's laptop, the vial she'd watched them exchange at the cafe. She told him about the date, January 15th, And the method, a drug that would make it look like an accident. Marcus listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. When Grace finished, she was breathless, tears streaming down her face. I tried to get proof. I took photos of the emails, but Michael found out. He deleted them. He threatened me. He said if I told anyone, he'd have me deported or— Her voice broke. Or make me disappear. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing everything. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he spoke. Grace, do you understand what you're asking me to believe? You're saying that Michael Sinclair, Mrs. Sinclair's husband, is planning to murder her in cold blood for money and control. I know how it sounds, but I believe you. Grace's head snapped up. What? Marcus's expression was grim. I've been doing security for 15 years. You learn to read people. And I've been reading Michael Sinclair since the day he moved into this building. He shook his head. That man has always given me a bad feeling. The way he treats Mrs. Sinclair in public, when he thinks no one's watching. Dismissive, cold. The way he talks to staff like we're beneath him. And the way he's been meeting with Maya Chen in the parking garage late at night for the past 2 months. Grace's eyes widened. You've seen them? I've seen them, and it never sat right with me. But I had no reason to report it, until now. Marcus stood and paced the small room. Here's the problem, Grace. Without hard evidence, we can't go to the police. They'll want documentation, recordings, something concrete. And if we tip our hand too early, Michael will cover his tracks, and we'll have nothing. Grace's heart sank. So what do we do? Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her directly. We get evidence, real, undeniable evidence, and we protect Mrs. Sinclair until we have it. How? You're on the inside. You see everything that happens in that penthouse. I need you to be my eyes and ears. Watch Michael. Watch Maya when she visits. If you see or hear anything at all, you come straight to me. Don't confront him. Don't try to stop him yourself. Just observe and report. Grace nodded, though fear coiled in her stomach. And if something happens before we get evidence? Marcus's expression hardened. Then I'll make sure Mrs. Sinclair doesn't drink or eat anything that Michael or Maya have access to. I'll be watching the building's entry logs, the elevator footage, everything. But Grace, he leaned forward, you need to be careful. If Michael even suspects you've told someone, he'll act. And I can't protect you if I don't know you're in danger. Grace swallowed hard. I understand. Marcus pulled out his phone and typed something, then showed her the screen. This is my personal number. You call or text me anytime, day or night. If something feels wrong, if you're scared, if Michael so much as looks at you the wrong way, you contact me immediately. Got it? Grace nodded and saved the number in her phone. We have 12 days, Marcus said quietly. 12 days to stop this from happening. We can do this, Grace, but we have to be smart. Please remember to like and subscribe if you're invested in this story. Your support means everything. The next few days were torture. Grace moved through the penthouse like a ghost, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. She watched Michael constantly, looking for any sign that he suspected she'd talked to someone. But he seemed relaxed, confident. He laughed on phone calls, kissed Ava goodbye in the mornings, played the role of the devoted husband with sickening ease. Ava, meanwhile, seemed lighter, happier. Michael and I had a really good talk last night, she told Grace one morning over coffee. He apologized for being distant lately. He said he's been struggling with feeling inadequate compared to my success, but he's working on it. He even suggested we take a vacation together next month. Just the two of us. Grace's stomach twisted. She forced a smile. That's wonderful, Ava. But inside she was screaming. Michael was laying the groundwork, making himself look like the loving husband, so that when Ava died, no one would suspect him. That night, Grace texted Marcus. He's playing the perfect husband. Ava doesn't suspect anything. Marcus replied immediately. That's what makes him dangerous. Stay vigilant. January 8th arrived. That made Grace's blood run cold. She was dusting the living room when she overheard Michael on the phone in his office. His door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried into the hallway. The timeline is confirmed. January 15th, 10 p.m. Ava will have her evening tea like always. You'll slip the compound into the cup while Grace is distracted in the kitchen. It dissolves completely. No taste. No smell. She'll be unconscious within 30 minutes. Grace pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Michael continued. I'll carry her to the bathroom, stage it like she fell asleep in the tub. By the time anyone finds her, it'll look like a tragic accident. Overworked CEO finally succumbs to exhaustion. The media will eat it up. There was a pause. Then Michael laughed, a sound that made Grace's skin crawl. And Grace? Don't worry about her. She's too scared to say anything. But if she does... Another pause. Then we make sure she has an accident too. A mugging gone wrong. Happens all the time in this city. Grace's legs nearly gave out beneath her. Michael ended the call and emerged from his office. Grace quickly moved down the hallway, pretending to be heading toward the kitchen, but not before Michael's eyes locked onto hers. He stopped, studied her. His expression was unreadable. Grace. She turned, her mouth dry. Yes, sir? How long have you been standing there? I just came from my room, sir. I was going to start dinner. He took a step closer. You didn't hear anything? No, sir. Michael's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Grace thought he was going to grab her again. But then Ava's voice called from the living room. Michael? Is that you? Can you help me with something? The tension broke. Michael's expression shifted back to neutral. Coming, sweetheart. He brushed past Grace, leaving her trembling in the hallway. The moment he was gone, Grace pulled out her phone and texted Marcus. Emergency. Need to talk. Now. 20 minutes later, Grace was in Marcus's office again, her words tumbling over each other as she recounted what she'd heard. Marcus's face was stone. They're going to do it in the penthouse. During her evening tea. That means Maya will have to get into the building that night without raising suspicion. What do we do? Marcus thought for a moment. On January 15th, I'll make sure I'm on duty. I'll monitor everyone who enters and exits the building. If Maya shows up, I'll know. But Grace... His expression was grave. We need to make sure that tea never reaches Mrs. Sinclair's lips. Can you do that? Grace nodded. I'll find a way. And if things go sideways, if Michael realizes you're interfering, you get out of that penthouse immediately. You hear me? You run, and you call me. But Ava, I'll protect Ava. But I can't do that if you're hurt or dead. Promise me, Grace. Grace hesitated, then nodded. I promise. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. If it came down to it, she'd sacrifice herself to save Ava. Because some promises were worth breaking. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on. Drop a comment and let me know. What do you think Grace should do? 7 days. That was all Grace had left. She marked each day on the small calendar in her room, watching the numbers shrink with growing dread. January 9th, January 10th, January 11th. Each morning, she woke up wondering if this would be the day Michael decided she knew too much. Each night, she lay awake listening for footsteps outside her door, terrified he'd come for her in the darkness. But Michael acted as if nothing was wrong. He was charming at breakfast, attentive to Ava, even cordial to Grace. It was a performance, and he was playing his part. Ava was glowing. She talked excitedly about the product launch scheduled for January 20th, a new AI platform that would revolutionize the tech industry. She showed Grace the press releases, the marketing materials, the schedule for the big unveiling. "This is everything I've worked for," Ava said, her eyes bright with passion. 5 years of development, and we're finally ready. Michael's been so supportive through all of this. "I don't know what I'd do without him." Grace's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to shake Ava, to make her see what was right in front of her. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not without proof. So she smiled and nodded and died a little inside every time Ava praised the man who was planning to kill her. On January 12th, 3 days before the planned murder, Maya Chen came to the penthouse. Grace was in the kitchen when she heard the doorbell. She dried her hands and moved to answer it, but Michael was already there, opening the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maya. Right on time. Maya stepped inside, dressed in an elegant black suit, her briefcase in hand. She looked every inch the successful executive, polished, professional, deadly. "Where's Ava?" Maya asked. "Conference call in her office. She'll be another hour at least." Michael glanced toward the kitchen, where Grace stood frozen. "Grace, we need privacy. Go to your room." Grace nodded and retreated, but she didn't go to her room. She went to the hallway just outside Michael's office and pressed herself against the wall, listening. Their voices were low, but Grace caught fragments. "Everything is set for the 15th. Board meeting scheduled for the 17th. By then she'll be gone, and we move to phase 2. The drug is ready. You just need to distract Grace long enough for me to slip it into the tea. No mistakes. We only get one shot at this." Grace's phone was in her pocket. Her hand trembled as she pulled it out and opened the voice recording app. She pressed record and held the phone as close to the door as she dared. Michael's voice came through clearer now. "The autopsy will show nothing. The compound metabolizes completely within hours. They'll rule it accidental drowning exhaustion, maybe some alcohol in her system. Tragic but not suspicious." Maya's voice was cold, clinical. "And the girl? Grace. She'll keep her mouth shut. I've made sure of that. But if she doesn't—" There was a pause, and Grace's blood turned to ice. "I have people who can handle problems quietly. She's undocumented. No one will even file a missing persons report." Grace's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She stopped the recording and backed away from the door as quietly as possible, her heart hammering in her chest. She had it. She finally had proof. She hurried to her room and immediately texted Marcus, "I have a recording. Michael and Maya talking about the plan. Can you meet me?" Marcus responded within seconds, "Not in the building. Too risky. Meet me at the coffee shop on 53rd and 3rd in 1 hour. Be careful." Grace deleted the text thread and hid her phone in her pillowcase. She needed to act normal, to not give Michael any reason to suspect she'd been listening. An hour later, she told Ava she needed to run to the pharmacy for personal items. Ava barely looked up from her laptop, waving her off with a distracted smile. Grace practically ran to the coffee shop, her phone clutched in her jacket pocket like a lifeline. Marcus was waiting in a corner booth, his expression tense. Grace slid in across from him and pulled out her phone, her hand still shaking. I recorded them. Michael and Maya, talking about the murder. She pressed play, and they both listened in silence as Michael's voice filled the space between them, cold and calculating, detailing exactly how he planned to kill his wife. When the recording ended, Marcus sat back, his jaw tight. "This is it. This is what we need. Can we go to the police now?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Not yet. If we go now, Michael will lawyer up immediately. He'll claim the recording was taken illegally, that you misunderstood, that it's a joke taken out of context, without physical evidence. The drug, the financial documents, something concrete. A good defense attorney could tear this apart." Grace's heart sank. "But we only have 3 days." "I know, which is why we need to catch them in the act." Marcus leaned forward. "On January 15th, we let them think everything is going according to plan. Maya will bring the drug. Michael will attempt to put it in Ava's tea. But we'll be ready. I'll have backup security in place, cameras recording, and the moment they make their move, we stop them. Then we call the police with not just the recording, but attempted murder caught on video." Grace's mind raced. What if something goes wrong? What if we're too late? "We won't be. I promise you, Grace. Ava will not drink that tea. But I need you to trust me and follow my lead exactly. Can you do that?" Grace nodded, though fear gnawed at her insides. "When Maya arrives that night, you text me immediately. I'll be monitoring the building, but I need confirmation the moment she's in the penthouse. Then you need to stall. Find a reason to delay the tea service. Drop something, start a conversation, anything to buy us time. I'll have my team in position, and we'll move in before anything happens to Mrs. Sinclair. And if Michael realizes what I'm doing—" Marcus's expression was grave. "Then you get out. Don't be a hero. Your safety matters too." Grace wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this plan would work, that in 3 days Ava would be safe and Michael would be behind bars. But the weight of fear in her chest told her that nothing was ever that simple. January 13th passed in agonizing slowness. Grace moved through her duties on autopilot, her mind constantly running through scenarios. What if Michael changed the plan? What if Maya came early? What if they realized Grace had recorded them? That evening, Ava ordered takeout and insisted Grace eat with her. They sat on the living room couch, watching a romantic comedy, and for a moment, Grace could almost pretend everything was normal. "I'm really glad you're here, Grace," Ava said during a commercial break. "This penthouse used to feel so empty, but now it feels like home." Grace's throat tightened. "I'm glad I'm here, too." Ava reached over and squeezed her hand. "You know, I've been thinking. Once the product launch is over, I want to help you figure out your immigration situation. I have lawyers who can explore options, humanitarian visas, maybe even a path to citizenship. You shouldn't have to live in fear." Tears burned in Grace's eyes. "Ava, you don't have to." "I want to. You're family now, Grace, and family takes care of each other." Grace nodded, unable to speak. She thought about Michael's plan, about how close Ava was to losing everything. Her life, her company, her dreams. Not if Grace could stop it. January 14th arrived like a death knell. 1 day left. Grace barely slept. Every sound in the penthouse made her jump. She kept her phone within reach at all times, Marcus's number on speed dial. That morning, Michael was in an unusually good mood. He hummed while making coffee, kissed Ava on the forehead, and even asked Grace how she was doing. Fine, sir, Grace managed, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. Good. That's good. He smiled. A predator's smile. Big day tomorrow. Ava's working from home, so we'll need you to make sure everything runs smoothly. Her evening tea at 10, as usual. I know we can count on you. The emphasis on those last words made Grace's skin crawl. He was reminding her, threatening her, making sure she knew her place. Of course, sir. Michael's smile widened. Excellent. After he left for a meeting, Ava pulled Grace aside. Is everything okay? You seem tense. Grace forced a smile. Just tired, I think. Ava studied her face with concern. You've been working too hard. After tomorrow, why don't you take a few days off? Go visit your aunt. Relax. Maybe, Grace said, though she knew there would be no relaxing until this nightmare was over. That afternoon, Grace received a text from Marcus. Everything is in place. Security team briefed. Cameras positioned. Tomorrow at 10 p.m., we end this. Stay strong. Grace stared at the message, then typed back, What if I can't do this? Marcus's response came immediately. You can. You're braver than you know. And you're not alone. Grace closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either Ava would be saved, or they would all be destroyed. There was no middle ground anymore. Hashtag banned. The night of reckoning, 8 to 10 minutes. If you've made it this far, please hit that like button and subscribe. We're approaching the climax of this story, and you don't want to miss what happens next. January 15th. Grace woke at dawn, though she hadn't really slept. She'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario, every way things could go wrong. She checked her phone, a message from Marcus sent at 5:47 a.m. Team is ready. I'll be in position by 8 p.m. Trust the plan. Grace got out of bed and knelt on the floor, the way her mother had taught her to pray as a child. She hadn't prayed much since coming to America, hadn't felt like God was listening to the prayers of an illegal immigrant trying to survive. But today, she prayed, Please, God, please let this work. Please keep Ava safe. And if something happens to me, please let it mean something. Her voice cracked on the last words, but she finished the prayer and stood up, wiping her eyes. Today, she would either save a life or lose her own. There was no room for fear anymore. Ava spent most of the day in her home office, preparing for the product launch. Grace could hear her on conference calls, her voice strong and confident, completely unaware that this was supposed to be her last day alive. Michael was home too, moving through the penthouse with an energy that set Grace's nerves on edge. He was too calm, too relaxed. He'd even helped Grace prepare lunch, chatting casually about the weather, about Ava's upcoming launch. It was surreal, horrifying. Around 7 in the evening, Michael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. I have to step out for about an hour. A quick meeting that couldn't wait. He looked directly at Grace. I'll be back by 9. Make sure Ava's tea is ready at 10 sharp, as always. Grace nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The moment Michael left, Grace texted Marcus. She just left, said he'd be back by 9. Marcus replied, Good. That means Maya will arrive between 9:30 and 9:45. The moment you see her, text me. Grace paced the kitchen, her hands shaking. She checked the tea cabinet. Everything was in its usual place. The kettle, the cups, Ava's favorite chamomile blend. By 10 o'clock tonight, if things went according to Michael's plan, poison would be in that tea. When she emerged, Ava was standing in the hallway. Grace, Are you okay? Grace quickly wiped her mouth. I'm fine. Just something I ate, I think. Ava's face filled with concern. She pressed the back of her hand to Grace's forehead. You're burning up. Grace, you should lie down. I can make my own tea tonight. No. Grace's voice came out too sharp, too panicked. Ava stepped back, surprised. Grace forced herself to breathe, to sound normal. I'm okay, really. I just need some water, and I want to make your tea. It's my job. Ava studied her face, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Grace, if something's wrong... Nothing's wrong. I promise. Grace managed a weak smile. I'll feel better after I drink some water. Ava hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if you need to rest, please tell me. Grace nodded and watched Ava return to her office. She checked her phone. 8:47 p.m. Less than 2 hours left. At 9:15, Grace heard the front door open. Her heart stopped. Michael was back. She listened from the kitchen as he greeted Ava, his voice warm and affectionate. How's the prep going, sweetheart? Good. Almost done with the final review. I think we're ready for Friday. I'm so proud of you. There was a pause. Then Michael added, Why don't you take a break? You've been working all day. I'll have Grace bring you your tea in a bit. You need to relax. You're right. I could use a break. Grace heard Ava's office door close. Then Michael's footsteps approaching the kitchen. He appeared in the doorway, his expression pleasant but his eyes cold. Grace, tea at 10. Don't forget. I won't, sir. Grace forced herself to meet his gaze. Just tired, sir. Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, after tonight you can rest easy. Everything will be different. The threat was clear, even wrapped in pleasant words. He left the kitchen, and Grace immediately pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. Michael is back. Waiting for Maya. Marcus. I'm in position. Stay alert. At 9:38 p.m. The doorbell rang. Grace's blood turned to ice. She heard Michael answer the door and heard Maya's smooth voice greeting him. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. No problem. Ava's in her office. She doesn't know you're here. Perfect. Their voices grew quieter as they moved to Michael's office. Grace crept toward the hallway, her phone in her hand. She texted Marcus. Maya is here. They're in Michael's office. Marcus, do not engage. I'm sending the team up now. Stall the tea service as long as possible. Grace's heart hammered. She moved back to the kitchen and stared at the clock on the wall. 9:42 p.m. She had 18 minutes. Grace paced the kitchen, her mind racing through everything that could go wrong. What if Marcus's team didn't get here in time? What if Michael forced her to serve the tea before they arrived? What if... She heard footsteps, multiple footsteps. Michael and Maya entered the kitchen together. Grace's breath caught in her throat. This was too early. It was only 9:48. Grace? Michael's voice had lost all pretense of warmth. It was flat, commanding, dangerous. We're doing this now, change of plans, but it's not 10 yet, sir. Mrs. Sinclair usually... I said now. Michael moved closer, blocking the kitchen exit. Start the kettle. Maya stood by the doorway, her hand already inside her designer purse. Grace could see the outline of the small vial through the leather. Grace's hands trembled as she filled the kettle with water. Her phone was in her back pocket. She needed to text Marcus, but Michael was watching her every move. You're shaking, Grace. Michael's voice was soft now, almost gentle. It made her skin crawl. Nervous about something? No, sir, just cold. Grace placed the kettle on the stove and turned on the burner. The flame flickered to life beneath it. She pulled out her phone, pretending to check the time. Michael's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, that same wrist he'd grabbed so many times before. The phone clattered to the floor. "You won't be needing that." Grace's heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. "Please, sir." "Please what?" Michael's grip tightened. "Please let you ruin everything. Please let you save her." He leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "I warned you what would happen if you interfered. You should have listened." The kettle began to whistle, a high, piercing sound that seemed to fill the entire penthouse. Michael released Grace's wrist and picked up the kettle himself. He poured the boiling water into Ava's favorite cup with steady, practiced hands. Steam rose between them like a ghost. Maya moved forward, pulling the vial from her purse. The liquid inside caught the light, clear, innocent-looking, deadly. Grace watched as Maya unscrewed the cap. This was it, the moment they'd been planning for weeks. The moment that would end Ava's life. Grace couldn't wait for Marcus anymore. She lunged forward and grabbed the cup, hot water sloshing over her hands. Pain seared her skin, but she didn't let go. She threw the cup across the kitchen. It shattered against the wall, porcelain and liquid exploding in every direction. The room went silent except for Grace's ragged breathing. Michael's face transformed. The mask of civility shattered just like the cup, revealing something monstrous underneath. "You stupid, stupid girl." He grabbed Grace by the throat and slammed her against the refrigerator. Her head cracked against the metal. Black spots danced in her vision. "Michael, we need to go." Maya's voice was sharp with panic. "Not until I deal with her." Michael's fingers tightened around Grace's throat. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. "You've destroyed everything. Everything. Do you understand what you've done?" Grace clawed at his hands, gasping, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. "Michael, let her go." Maya grabbed his arm. "We can still salvage this if we leave now." "No. She's seen too much. She knows too much." Michael's eyes were wild, inhuman. "She disappears tonight. We make it look like she ran away, another illegal who couldn't hack it in America." Grace's lungs burned. Her fingers were going numb. Then, a voice, weak, confused, terrified. "Michael?" Ava stood in the kitchen doorway, her face pale with shock. She looked at Grace, at Michael's hands around her throat, at Maya standing there with a vial still in her hand, at the shattered cup on the floor. Michael's grip loosened slightly. "Ava, sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like. Let her go." Ava's voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Let her go right now. She's been stealing from us. I caught her, and she attacked me. I said let her go." Michael released Grace. She collapsed to the floor, coughing and gasping, her throat on fire. Ava moved toward Grace, but Michael blocked her path. "Ava, listen to me. You don't understand what's happening." "I understand perfectly." Ava's voice broke. "Grace tried to warn me. Weeks ago, she said I should be careful who I trust, and I didn't listen. She's lying." "Then why is Maya here? In our kitchen? At 10 o'clock at night?" "Holding—" Ava's eyes fixed on the vial in Maya's hand. "What is that?" Maya's face was stone. She said nothing. "What is that, Michael?" Ava's voice rose, shaking with fury and fear. "What I es that?" Michael's jaw clenched. For a moment, Grace thought he might confess, might drop the act and admit everything. Instead, he smiled. That cold, calculated smile Grace had seen so many times. "It's a shame, really. I almost felt bad about it. But you made this so easy, Ava. so desperate to be loved, so desperate to believe I actually wanted you. He took a step toward his wife. Did you really think I loved you? You, with your perfect company and your perfect life and your perfect everything? While I was just the husband, the accessory, the VP you created to make me feel important. Ava stumbled backward, her hand over her mouth. The board will side with us, Michael continued, his voice calm now, matter of fact. Maya's already laid the groundwork, and once you're gone, I'll finally have what should have been mine from the beginning. You were going to kill me. Ava's words came out as a whisper. Tonight, in your bath, while you slept, Michael gestured to the vial. That little thing would have made it all look like an accident. Tragic. The brilliant CEO taken too soon. Ava's knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter. Grace tried to stand, to reach Ava, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Ava, I'm sorry. I tried to tell you. And you... Michael turned back to Grace, his expression darkening. You should have stayed in Nigeria where you belonged. Should have kept your mouth shut like I told you. Now you're going to... The front door burst open with a deafening crash. Marcus stormed in first, followed by 4 security officers, all wearing body cameras. Nobody move. NYPD is 10 seconds behind us. Michael's face went white. Maya dropped the vial. It shattered on the tile, liquid spreading across the floor. What? How did you... Michael looked at Grace, then at Marcus, realization dawning. You called them. You've been working with them this whole time. Grace met his eyes, her voice hoarse but steady. I told you. Ava saved my life. I wasn't going to let you take hers. Sirens wailed outside. The sound of boots thundering up the stairwell. Michael made a desperate lunge toward Ava, but Marcus was faster. He tackled Michael to the ground, pinning him with professional efficiency. Michael Sinclair, don't move. Maya tried to run, but 2 officers blocked the exit. She froze, her face a mask of cold calculation even in defeat. Police officers flooded the penthouse, 6, 8, 10 of them, filling the kitchen with uniforms and flashing lights. Grace watched it all unfold as if from a great distance. Her throat ached. Her hands burned from the hot water. Her head throbbed where it had hit the refrigerator. But Ava was alive. Ava was safe. A female officer knelt beside Grace. Miss, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Grace nodded, unable to speak. Across the kitchen, another officer was handcuffing Michael. He was still talking, still trying to manipulate, still playing the victim. This is insane. I'm the victim here. That girl attacked me. My wife will tell you. Mrs. Sinclair? The lead detective turned to Ava. Can you confirm your husband's account? Ava looked at Michael, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. The man she'd married, the man she'd trusted, the man who'd planned to murder her in her sleep. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. My husband just confessed to planning my murder. Grace Okoro saved my life. Arrest him? Michael's face crumpled. Ava, please. Get him out of my sight. They hauled Michael to his feet and began reading him his rights. Michael Sinclair, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. Attempted murder. His protests faded as they dragged him toward the door. Maya went quietly, her face expressionless, showing no remorse even as they handcuffed her. And then they were gone. The kitchen that had been full of chaos moments ago suddenly felt empty. Grace was still on the floor. Ava was still standing by the counter, frozen. The paramedics arrived, surrounding Grace, checking her vitals. examining the bruises on her throat and the burns on her hands. But Grace's eyes never left Ava. Ava, who was staring at the spot where Michael had stood. Ava, whose entire world had just shattered. Ava, who had just learned that the man she loved had wanted her dead. Finally, Ava's legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor, and a sound came from her that Grace had never heard before, a wail of pure, devastating anguish. Grace shoved aside the paramedic trying to bandage her hands. She crawled across the kitchen floor and wrapped her arms around Ava. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have. You saved me." Ava's voice was barely audible between sobs. "You saved my life. I almost didn't. I was too scared, but you did." Ava pulled back, cupping Grace's face in her hands. Her eyes were red and swollen, her makeup streaked with tears. "You risked everything for me. Everything." They held each other on the kitchen floor, surrounded by police and paramedics and broken porcelain, as the weight of what had almost happened, and what had been prevented, crashed over them both. Marcus appeared in Grace's peripheral vision. He knelt beside them, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Grace, Mrs. Sinclair, it's over. They're in custody. You're both safe now." But Grace knew it wasn't over. Not really, because now came the hardest part. Now Ava had to face the truth of what her husband had done, what he'd planned, what he'd been all along. And Grace still didn't know if she'd be arrested, deported, or worse. The victory felt hollow, bittersweet. They'd survived the night. But what came next might destroy them anyway. # You're still with us. Thank you. This part is going to be intense. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. The penthouse felt like a crime scene because it was won. Yellow tape cordoned off the kitchen. Evidence markers sat where the shattered cup had been, where the vial had fallen, where Grace's phone still lay on the floor. Forensic photographers moved through the space, their camera flashes creating ghostly after-images. Grace sat on the living room couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders despite the warmth of the room. Her throat was bandaged. Her hands were wrapped in gauze. A female detective sat across from her, notebook open, asking questions Grace had already answered 3 times. "And when did you first suspect Mr. Sinclair was planning to harm Mrs. Sinclair?" Grace's voice came out raspy, damaged. "About 6 weeks ago. I overheard him talking to Maya. I didn't understand everything at first, but I knew something was wrong." "Why didn't you go to the police immediately?" Grace looked down at her bandaged hands. "Because I'm undocumented." Michael knew that. He threatened me. He said if I told anyone, I'd be deported. Or worse. The detective's expression softened. "But you told Marcus Williams, the head of building security." "Not until a week ago. I was too scared. But I couldn't let Ava die. She's been kind to me. Grace's voice broke. "She's the only person who's treated me like I matter." "You're very brave, Grace." Grace shook her head. "I was terrified. I'm still terrified." Across the room, Ava sat in one of the armchairs, staring blankly at the wall. She hadn't spoken in over an hour. Hadn't cried. Hadn't moved. She just sat there, wrapped in shock so profound it looked like she'd left her body entirely. A different detective sat near her, speaking in low, gentle tones. "Mrs. Sinclair, I know this is overwhelming, but we need your statement. Can you tell us what you saw when you entered the kitchen?" Ava's voice was hollow, mechanical. "I saw Michael choking Grace. Maya was standing there with something in her hand. There was broken porcelain on the floor." "Did your husband say anything to you?" Ava's jaw clenched. he confessed. He told me he was going to kill me, that Maya was helping him, that the board would side with them. Her hands began to shake. He said he never loved me, that I made it easy because I was desperate. The detective wrote quickly. Mrs. Sinclair, did you have any suspicion before tonight that your husband might— No. The word came out sharp, defensive. I trusted him completely. I thought— Her voice cracked. I thought we were building a life together. I thought he loved me. Grace watched Ava from across the room, her heart breaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was the complete destruction of everything Ava believed about her life, her marriage, herself. The detective continued gently. We'll need to do a full financial audit of your company and personal accounts. If Mr. Sinclair was planning to inherit your assets, there may be other criminal activity we need to uncover. Ava nodded numbly. We'll also need to examine all communications between your husband and Miss Chen. Emails, text messages, phone records. This appears to be a highly organized conspiracy. Do whatever you need to do. Ava's voice was barely audible. I just want to understand why. The detective closed her notebook. Mrs. Sinclair, I've been doing this job for 15 years. In cases like this, the why is almost always the same. Money, power, greed. People convince themselves they deserve what someone else has, and they'll do anything to take it. But I loved him. I gave him everything. That's exactly why he thought he could get away with it. The detective's voice was kind but firm. He underestimated your intelligence, and he underestimated Grace's courage. It was past midnight when the last police officer finally left. Marcus stayed behind, despite Grace insisting he should go home. I'm not leaving until I know you're both okay, he said firmly. The three of them sat in the living room, Grace and Ava on the couch, Marcus in the armchair. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, Ava spoke. Grace! Grace looked up. Why didn't you tell me sooner? There was no accusation in Ava's voice, just exhaustion and confusion. Why didn't you warn me? Grace's eyes filled with tears. I tried. Remember when I told you to be careful who you trust? But you said Michael would never hurt you, and I had no proof. Just pieces of conversations I'd overheard. I was afraid. Her voice broke. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that Michael would call immigration, that I'd lose everything. So you carried this alone, for weeks. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ava closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me. You have nothing to apologize for. Yes, I do. Ava opened her eyes, and they were blazing with emotion now. Not anger, but grief. You were 17 years old, undocumented, terrified, and you tried to save me, while I was blind. While I defended the man who was planning to murder me. She pressed her hands to her face. How did I not see it? How could I be so stupid? Marcus leaned forward. Mrs. Sinclair, you're not stupid. Abusers are expert manipulators. They make you doubt your own instincts. They isolate you. They make you feel like you're the problem. But I run a billion-dollar company. I negotiate with investors, manage hundreds of employees. How could I not see that my own husband— Ava's voice broke completely. The dam finally burst. She doubled over, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Grace moved closer and wrapped her arms around Ava, and this time Ava didn't hold back. She clung to Grace like a drowning person clings to a life raft, her sobs raw and primal. He was going to kill me. In my own home. In my own bathtub. And I would have never known. I would have just gone to sleep and never woken up. But you didn't. You're here. You're alive. Because of you. Ava pulled back, gripping Grace's shoulders. Her face was blotchy and wet, her eyes swollen. Because a 17-year-old girl was braver than I was, because you risked everything. You gave me a home when I had nothing, Grace interrupted. You treated me like family. You made me feel human again after months of being invisible. I wasn't going to let him take you away. They held each other in the devastated living room, two women bound together by survival and sacrifice. Marcus cleared his throat gently. I hate to interrupt, but there's something you both need to know. The police are going to want to interview you again tomorrow. They're building their case against Michael and Maya. Grace. He looked at her seriously. Immigration is going to get involved. There's no way around it. Grace's stomach dropped. So I'll be deported, not if I have anything to say about it. Ava's voice was fierce, despite the tears still streaming down her face. I told the press I'd protect you, and I meant it. I'm calling my lawyers first thing in the morning. We'll figure this out. But Michael was right. I'm illegal. I have no papers. You're a witness in an attempted murder case. That changes things. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. There are protective visas for people in your situation. U visas for victims of crimes who cooperate with law enforcement. My contact at NYPD says they're already working on it. Grace wanted to believe him, but years of fear and uncertainty had taught her not to hope too much. Ava seemed to read her mind. Grace, look at me. Grace met her eyes. You're not going anywhere. I will fight for you with every resource I have. You saved my life. The least I can do is make sure you have one too. The next morning came too quickly. Neither Grace nor Ava had slept. They'd spent the night in Ava's bedroom, Ava refusing to let Grace out of her sight, and Grace too afraid to be alone. They'd lain on opposite sides of the king-sized bed, silent, each processing the trauma in their own way. When dawn broke, Ava's phone began ringing, and it didn't stop. Her assistant, her lawyers, her board members, the police, the media relations team, everyone wanted answers, statements, explanations. Ava ignored most of the calls, but when her lead attorney called, she answered. Stuart, yes, I know. The police have been here all night. She listened, her face growing paler. What do you mean the media already knows? How? She closed her eyes. Of course. Someone at the police station leaked it. Perfect. Grace watched from the doorway as Ava paced her bedroom, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care about the optics right now, Stuart. My husband tried to kill me. That's the story. We're not spinning this into something else. A pause. No, I'm not doing interviews yet. I can barely think straight. Another pause. Grace Okoro is a hero. If anyone tries to paint her as... Ava's voice turned to steel. Then you shut that down immediately. She saved my life. Anyone who suggests otherwise will deal with me personally. She ended the call and threw her phone onto the bed. The media knows, she said to Grace. It'll be everywhere by noon. My lawyers are preparing a statement. Yes, but we're going to control the narrative as much as we can. Ava walked over and took Grace's hands gently, mindful of the bandages. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Grace nodded, even as fear clawed at her chest. By 10 o'clock, 2 detectives returned to the penthouse, the same ones from the night before, plus a third person, a federal prosecutor. They all sat in the living room. Ava had her lawyer present now, a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline who took notes on everything. The lead detective, a man named Rodriguez, opened a thick folder. Mrs. Sinclair, Miss Okoro, thank you for agreeing to meet with us again. I know this is difficult, but we need to walk through everything we've uncovered so far. What have you found? Ava's voice was steady, but Grace could see her hands trembling in her lap. Rodriguez exchanged a glance with the prosecutor, then spoke carefully. "Mrs. Sinclair, we've executed warrants for your husband's phone, computer, and financial records. What we've discovered is extensive. Tell me, your husband has been embezzling from Sinclair Dynamics for approximately 18 months. Small amounts at first, 50,000 here, 70,000 there, funneled through fake vendor accounts. But in the last 6 months, the amounts increased significantly." Ava's face went white. "How much?" "Our forensic accountants are still tallying, but current estimates put it around $3 million. The room went silent. Grace watched Ava's face cycle through emotions: shock, disbelief, fury, devastation. $3 million, Ava whispered. "He stole $3 million from my company." "And he was in significant personal debt," the prosecutor added. "Gambling losses, bad investments, credit card debt. He needed your life insurance payout and control of the company to cover his tracks. If you'd lived another month, your annual audit would have caught the discrepancies." Ava stood abruptly and walked to the window, her back to the room. Her shoulders were rigid with tension. Rodriguez continued, his voice gentler now. "There's something else. We found text messages between Michael and Maya dating back 9 months. They've been planning this for a long time, Mrs. Sinclair. It wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. I want to see them." Ava's voice was flat. "Mrs. Sinclair, I don't think... I want to see them." She turned around. Her face was composed, but her eyes were haunted. "I need to understand what he was thinking. What they were planning. I need to know." Caroline, the lawyer, touched Ava's arm. "Ava, seeing those messages will only hurt you more. I'm already destroyed, Caroline. What's a little more pain?" Ava's laugh was bitter. "Show me." Rodriguez hesitated, then pulled out a tablet and navigated to a file. He handed it to Ava. Grace watched as Ava scrolled through the messages, her expression growing more devastated with each passing second. Finally, Ava stopped on one message. She read it aloud, her voice shaking. "She actually thinks I love her. It's pathetic, but it makes this easier. The more she trusts me, the less she'll see coming." Ava looked up, tears streaming down her face. "He wrote that 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, while I was planning our anniversary trip, while I was trying to save our marriage, he was writing this." Grace couldn't take it anymore. She crossed the room and took the tablet from Ava's hands. Don't do this to yourself. I need to know. You need to heal. Reading his lies won't help." Ava stared at Grace, then broke down completely. She collapsed against Grace, sobbing, and Grace held her while the lawyers and detectives looked away, giving them a moment of privacy. Rodriguez spoke quietly. "There's one more thing. We ran a full background check on Mr. Sinclair, including medical records." Ava pulled away from Grace, wiping her eyes. "What did you find?" "Mrs. Sinclair." Rodriguez's expression was pained. "Your husband has a medical condition called azoospermia. It's a form of male infertility. He's been aware of this diagnosis since he was 23 years old." The words hung in the air. Grace saw the moment they registered, saw Ava's face go from confusion to understanding to absolute devastation. He's been infertile this whole time." "Yes, ma'am. But we tried for 2 years. I went through treatments, hormone injections. I blamed myself. I thought I was the one who—" Ava's voice rose, hysterical now. He knew it was him, and he let me think it was my fault. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sinclair." "He let me suffer for 2 years," Ava screamed. She grabbed a decorative vase from the side table and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall. He watched me cry. He watched me hate myself. He told me I wasn't trying hard enough. He said maybe if I was less stressed, if I was more present, if I was better. She was hyperventilating now, her words tumbling over each other. And all along, it was him. It was always him. And he knew. Caroline tried to approach her. Ava, breathe. But Ava was past hearing. She collapsed to her knees, her hands covering her face, her entire body racked with sobs so violent they seemed to tear her apart from the inside. Grace dropped to the floor beside her. She didn't say anything. There were no words that could fix this, so she just wrapped her arms around Ava and held her while she shattered. The detectives quietly gathered their files and stood to leave. Rodriguez paused at the door. "Mrs. Sinclair, we have more than enough evidence to charge your husband with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, embezzlement, and fraud. The DA is confident we can secure a conviction. But we'll need both of you to testify." Ava didn't respond. She couldn't. She was drowning in the enormity of the betrayal. Grace looked up at the detective and nodded. "We'll testify. Whatever you need." After they left, it was just Grace, Ava, and Caroline in the destroyed living room. Caroline knelt beside them. "Ava, I know this is unbearable right now, but we need to make some decisions. The media storm is going to be relentless. Your board is demanding a statement, and Grace's immigration situation needs to be addressed immediately." Ava finally looked up, her face ravaged by tears. Grace's immigration situation? ICE has been notified of her involvement in the case. They could issue a detainer at any time. No. Ava's voice was hoarse but firm. "That's not happening. Call every contact you have. I don't care what it costs. Grace is getting permanent residency. Today." "Ava, immigration law doesn't work that quickly. Then make it work." Ava stood on shaky legs, pulling Grace up with her. "This girl saved my life. She risked everything while I was blind and stupid. She's not being punished for that. Do you understand me?" Caroline looked between them, then nodded. "I'll make some calls." That afternoon, Grace sat in a small office at the federal building, facing an immigration officer and two of Ava's lawyers. The officer, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Park, reviewed Grace's file with a neutral expression. "Miss Okoro, you entered the United States on a tourist visa that expired 7 months ago. You've been living and working in the country illegally since that time." Grace's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am. Under normal circumstances, you would be subject to immediate deportation." Grace's hands clenched in her lap. This was it. This was where everything ended. But Mrs. Park continued. "However, you are currently a material witness in a high-profile attempted murder case. You cooperated fully with law enforcement at great personal risk, and you meet the criteria for a U visa, a visa designated for victims of crimes who assist in the investigation and prosecution of those crimes." Grace's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," one of Ava's lawyers interjected, "that we're petitioning for you to receive a U visa, which would allow you to remain in the United States legally for up to 4 years. After 3 years, you'd be eligible to apply for permanent residency." Grace couldn't speak. She looked from the lawyer to Mrs. Park, afraid to hope. Mrs. Park's expression softened slightly. "Miss Okoro, your case is unusual. The level of courage you displayed, the risk you took, that matters. I'm recommending approval of your U visa application. It should be processed within a few weeks." "Weeks?" Grace's voice cracked. "But what happens until then? You'll be granted temporary protection status. As long as you cooperate with the prosecution and don't leave the state, you won't be detained or deported." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, I can stay?" "You can stay?" Grace broke down, her face in her hands, sobbing with relief so profound it hurt. One of the lawyers placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Grace, there's one more thing Mrs. Sinclair wanted us to discuss with you. She's filed a petition to become your legal guardian." Grace's head snapped up. "What?" "Given that you're 17 and have no family in the United States, Mrs. Sinclair is seeking guardianship until you turn 18. If approved, she would be legally responsible for your care and welfare." Grace couldn't process the words. "She wants to adopt me?" "Not adoption, technically. Guardianship." "But yes, she wants to make sure you're protected, that you have a stable home, that you have a future." Grace thought of Ava, broken and devastated in her penthouse, dealing with the worst betrayal imaginable. And in the midst of all that pain, she was thinking about Grace. Protecting Grace. Fighting for Grace. "Why?" Grace whispered. "Why would she do that for me?" The lawyer smiled. "Because you're family now, and that's what family does." When Grace returned to the penthouse that evening, she found Ava sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums. Pictures of Ava and Michael on their wedding day. On vacation, at company events. All of them lies now. All of them tainted. Ava looked up as Grace entered. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she wasn't crying anymore. She looked empty. "I've been sitting here trying to find one picture, just one, where he looks like he actually loved me." Her voice was flat. "But I can't. In every photo, his smile doesn't reach his eyes. How did I not see it?" Grace sat down beside her. "Because you loved him. And when you love someone, you see what you want to see." Ava picked up their wedding photo, her in a stunning white gown, Michael in a tuxedo, both of them smiling at the camera. She stared at it for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, tore it in half. Then she tore it again, and again, until the image was nothing but confetti in her hands. "I wasted 2 years on him. 2 years of my life loving a man who was planning to kill me. You didn't waste them. You were being who you are, loyal, loving, generous. That's not a weakness, Ava. That's strength." Ava looked at Grace, and for the first time since the night before, something other than devastation flickered in her eyes. Gratitude. "The lawyers told me about your visa, about the guardianship petition." Grace nodded. "Thank you. For everything. I don't know how I'll ever—" "You don't have to thank me, Grace. You saved my life. This is the least I can do. But you're going through so much right now. You shouldn't have to worry about me. You are what I'm worried about." Ava set down the torn photo. "Michael took so much from me. My trust, my marriage. 2 years of blaming myself for something that was never my fault. But he didn't take everything. He didn't take you. And he didn't take my company. And he's not going to destroy me." Grace saw something harden in Ava's expression, determination rising from the ashes of devastation. "We're going to testify against him. We're going to make sure he spends the rest of his life in prison, and then we're going to rebuild. Both of us." Ava took Grace's bandaged hand. "You and me, we're going to heal from this. Together." Grace squeezed her hand. "Together." They sat there on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of Ava's shattered marriage, and made a silent promise to each other. They had survived the worst night of their lives. Now they would survive what came after. If you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button. We're in the final stretch of this incredible story. Michael and Maya were being held without bail. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The recording, the vial, the financial documents showing Michael's debts, and Maya's promised payoff, security footage of their meetings, emails, everything. The media storm was immediate and brutal. Billionaire CEO's husband arrested in murder-for-hire plot. Tech mogul Ava Sinclair nearly killed by spouse and board member. Grace's face was plastered across every news outlet. Reporters camped outside the building. Her phone, a new one Ava had bought her, rang constantly with interview requests. Ava's PR team worked overtime to control the narrative, but there was no controlling this. It was too big, too sensational. On the fourth day, Ava called a press conference. Grace stood backstage, watching through a monitor as Ava faced a room full of reporters. She looked exhausted but composed, wearing a simple black suit, her hair pulled back. "I want to thank everyone for their concern and support during this difficult time," Ava began, her voice steady. "What happened to me is a reminder that abuse and manipulation can happen to anyone, regardless of wealth or success. I was blind to the truth because I wanted to believe in my marriage. But thanks to the courage of one young woman, I'm alive today." Ava paused, her eyes finding the camera. Grace Okoro is 17 years old. She came to this country seeking opportunity and safety. When she discovered a plot to murder me, she risked everything. Her freedom, her safety, her life, to save mine. She is a hero, and I will spend every day of my life making sure she's protected and has the future she deserves. The reporters erupted with questions, but Ava held up her hand. Grace's immigration status has been a topic of debate in the media. I want to be clear. She is under protective witness status, and my legal team is working with immigration authorities to secure permanent residency for her. This young woman saved my life. The least this country can do is give her a home. More questions. More flashing cameras. Ava answered a few more, then left the stage. When she found Grace backstage, she pulled her into a fierce hug. "You're not going anywhere. I promise." 2 weeks later, Grace sat in a federal immigration office with Ava and a team of lawyers. The officer behind the desk reviewed Grace's file, then looked up with a small smile. "Miss Okoro, based on your cooperation in a major criminal case, your status as a material witness, and the humanitarian circumstances of your situation, the Department of Homeland Security is granting you a U visa, a visa for victims of crime who have assisted law enforcement." Grace's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means you can legally remain in the United States for 4 years. After 3 years, you'll be eligible to apply for a green card and, eventually, citizenship." Tears streamed down Grace's face. Ava squeezed her hand so hard it hurt, but Grace didn't care. "There's one more thing," the officer continued. "Mrs. Sinclair has petitioned to become your legal guardian until you turn 18. Given the circumstances, that petition has been approved." Grace turned to Ava, her eyes wide. You're adopting me?" Ava's own eyes were wet with tears. "If you'll have me, you saved my life, Grace. But more than that, you gave me hope again. You showed me what real family looks like, and I don't want to lose that." Grace couldn't speak. She just nodded and fell into Ava's arms, sobbing with relief and joy and the overwhelming knowledge that, for the first time since her parents died, she had a home. The trial took place 6 months later. Michael and Maya both pleaded not guilty, but the evidence was insurmountable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, embezzlement, fraud. Michael was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Maya received 28 years. Grace attended the sentencing with Ava. When Michael was led into the courtroom in his orange jumpsuit, his eyes found Grace's. For a moment, she saw the man who had threatened her, who had grabbed her wrist, who had promised to make her disappear. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She stared back at him, her chin raised, and watched as he looked away first. When the judge read the sentence, Michael's face crumpled. He tried to speak, to beg for mercy, but the judge silenced him. You targeted the woman who loved you, who trusted you, who gave you every opportunity to be the man she believed you were. You manipulated her pain, exploited her vulnerability, and planned her murder with calculated cruelty. This court has no sympathy for you, Mr. Sinclair. As they led him away, Michael looked at Ava one last time. She met his gaze with something Grace had never seen in her before. Not anger, not sadness, peace. 1 year after that terrible January night, Grace stood in the library of the penthouse, now just Ava's home, redecorated and reimagined without any trace of Michael. She was 18 now, a legal resident, enrolled in college with a full scholarship that Ava had helped her secure. She was studying business and computer science, already talking about maybe working at Sinclair Dynamics someday. Ava walked in carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, their tradition now, every Sunday evening. They sat together on the couch, comfortable in the silence. "Do you ever think about that night?" Ava asked quietly. Grace considered the question, every day, but not with fear anymore, more like gratitude. Gratitude. Because it brought us together. I know that sounds strange, but if none of that had happened, I'd just be your maid. I wouldn't be your daughter. Ava smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. You were never just my maid, Grace. From the moment you walked into this home, you were family. I just didn't realize it until you saved my life. Grace leaned her head on Ava's shoulder. Mama used to tell me that God puts us exactly where we're supposed to be, even when we don't understand why. I think I finally understand. Ava kissed the top of Grace's head. Your mother was a wise woman. They sat together as the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. 2 women who had saved each other. 2 women who had found family in the most unexpected place. 2 women who had survived the darkness and chosen, every single day, to step into the light. 3 years later, Grace opened the stage at her college graduation, her cap and gown crisp and new, her smile radiant. Ava sat in the front row, cheering louder than anyone else. After the ceremony, they took photos together. Mother and daughter, survivor and hero, 2 souls forever bound by the night that changed everything. A reporter approached them, asking if they'd be willing to share their story one more time. Grace looked at Ava, who nodded. What would you say to young people who are afraid to speak up when they see something wrong? The reporter asked. Grace thought for a moment, then spoke clearly and confidently. I'd tell them what my mother told me. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing truth even when your hands are trembling. It's speaking up even when your voice shakes. It's doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. She paused, her eyes meeting Ava's. Because sometimes the life you save might be your own, and sometimes it might be someone else's. But either way, you'll know you stood for something, and that matters more than anything. The reporter smiled. What's next for you, Grace? Grace grinned. I start working at Sinclair Dynamics next month, Director of Community Outreach and Immigrant Services. We're launching a program to help undocumented young people access education and legal resources. And your guardian, your mother, approves. Ava stepped forward, wrapping her arm around Grace's shoulders. It was my idea. Grace taught me that success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others. She's going to change lives, just like she changed mine. As they walked away together, Grace felt her mother's presence, not in grief, but in gratitude. She'd kept her promise. She'd done what was right, even when it was terrifying. And she'd found home. And that, friends, is where our story ends. Grace Okoro arrived in America with nothing. No papers, no family, no future. But she found something far more valuable than wealth or status. She found courage. She found family. She found herself. Michael Sinclair remains in federal prison, where he'll spend the next 3 decades. Maya Chen is serving her sentence in a different facility. Neither has shown any remorse. But Ava Sinclair rebuilt her life and her company, stronger than ever. And Grace Okoro became exactly what her mother always knew she could be, a woman of integrity, courage, and compassion. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what part of Grace's journey resonated with you most. And remember, if you ever find yourself facing an impossible choice between what's easy and what's right, choose right. Always choose right. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.